Welcome to another episode of Intune.training, a place to learn how to use Microsoft Intune. The Steve and Adam Show.
Hey, Adam.
Hey, wait a second. This is like back in the good old days.
What are
It's
you
just
trying
me
to
and
say
Steve.
there, Adam?
It's got a little crowded here recently. I don't know.
We're going OG.
Yeah. Let's make it happen. So it's just me and Steve tonight. The other guys are taking a break, and that's cool. So we are going to talk about conditional access policies and conditional access and application protection policies, specifically in relation to iOS devices. So if you don't manage iOS,
You're
skip
lucky.
over this one probably. You might find some interesting information.
We're going to preface it that Adam doesn't manage his mobile phone fleet. So he's a little bit, how does this work? Why is this important? And that's part of why we're going to go through this session. We're also going to recap the conditional access stuff that we went over in episode 8 of season 1. And the reason why is because they are better together. So it gives us the ability to sit there and say, we only want to use enlightened applications, not just the inbox application. So we'll go through that. We'll have some failing demos and we'll explain why, and we'll go from there.
And just for reference, if you do go back and reference episode 8 of season 1, the audio is quite out of sync. So, but the discussion is good, and there's several links there as you look through the description. There's links to conditional access documentation and things. So it may be worth listening to more so than watching, because it was in our early technical difficulties, just get it out the door days. So we're putting a little bit more effort into things these days. I mean,
just a touch.
Some of us anyway. Steve, you could at least comb your hair. Jeez.
Let me put this mic in front.
Yeah. Whatever. All right. Anyway, let's carry on. Let's get to it. Everybody skips over this stuff anyway. All right. So show us what you got to show us. I'll try to pay attention.
All right.
So
I should really just get through it like previously, but no, I'm going to do the demo.
You should let me drive on your computer. That would be great. So just for the just baseline setting, in case people don't go watch episode 8, what in the world is conditional access, and what are application protection policies, and why do they matter?
All right, so let's start off with conditional access. Conditional access is how we sit there and say you can access company resources if you meet these criteria. When we're managing Windows computers, we're going to typically sit there and say we want them to be marked as compliant by Intune or hybrid joined, or, and this is a newer feature, let me just double check before I talk about it. Otherwise, you can start looking in here. So this is the conditional access portal, and we go new policy, and we can go here down to session, not session, grant, and yeah, I need to cut that section out. All right, sorry, Adam.
Do you want to start over?
Not from the start, just from the conditional access part. So what conditional access is how we control access to your devices. So access to the corporate data, be it Exchange, Teams, Intune, Azure, associated components. We can sit there and say, if your application is registered into Azure Active Directory, conditional access allows us to say, you must be on a compliant device, you must be hybrid AAD joined, you must be running certain protocols. One of the big and important things, and what I'm going to stress right now before I even mention it, make sure you test everything before you turn this on. But one of the big things you should be doing in your environment is using conditional access to block legacy authentication. These are authentication protocols that allow spray passwords and things like that to be ran on your environment. But there will or could be things in your environment that leverage that authentication protocol. So make sure you test it before you just go in and turn it off, because there would be nothing worse than blocking access to your executives' special printer or special scenario that needs those legacy authentication protocols. So I'm just calling that out.
What can we apply the conditional access policies to? Like, what can you apply it to my personal device, or to a
user
thing that I log into from my personal device, or how does that work?
So how we would typically apply it is based on cloud apps. There is user actions where you can sit there and say, well, it needs to be set up in this scenario. But for what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about cloud applications. So this cloud application, we're going to sit there. The most important one in your organization is going to be Office 365. This is what the majority of your end users are going to be using. Previously, you may have used the Exchange connector, the SharePoint connector, and a myriad of other components of the O365 connector. But now you can just select that O365 and it will cover across all of the others. So you'll see that now includes Flow, Forms, Teams, O365, Exchange Online, Office 365 SharePoint Online, Office 365 Yammer, and others. And we just tick that and we go, we are going to apply this to this.
Okay.
We're going to take a step back and we're going to say, well, can we deploy it to who? And in our scenario, we're going to say select users and groups, because we don't want to apply it to everybody right now. And we can sit there and say, well, we want directory roles. And this is super important when we're going to talk about if you're going to give out global admin. You can sit there and say, with this directory role, I expect that you're going to be on a trusted device. You're going to be fully compliant. There is no risks. There's no issues on that device. And if you don't, you're not getting access.
Now, so are these directory roles? Are they Intune roles or Azure Active Directory roles?
These are the Azure Active Directory roles. So the interesting thing with conditional access is traditionally it's lived in Azure Active Directory, but over the last few years it's started moving more into that endpoint management portal. And the reason is because it's the endpoint managers that typically will coordinate and manage this, and not the standard user accounts. It's not the AAD admins.
Well, so interestingly, in my production environment, I can't get to conditional access, even though I have the Intune administrator role assigned to me from Active Directory. I cannot manage conditional access with my current access, even though I see it in endpoint. I don't have the right access to it.
Because the RBAC that's required for conditional access is still Active Directory. Oh, sorry, Azure Active Directory. So users, what is it? I can never remember exactly which one it is.
Conditional Access Administrator.
Yeah, so that's now been split out, but previously it was part of that directory writers and directory admins.
Gotcha.
So it was all around the AAD configuration.
Cool.
Cool. So we've got our users, that's just going to apply to myself. We've got our app, which is going to be Office 365 in this scenario. And then we're going to go here and go our conditionals or conditions. We can sit there and say we want it to be at a low risk for the user profile. So this is where if your account's been going and having impossible travel flags, or if it's doing something inappropriate, you can sit there and say it has to be of a high level, and then we're going to sit there and force you to have a higher level of requirements. And that's where we're going to force you to do MFA prompts, or we're going to do a whole heap of additional stuff. We're not going to set that one in this scenario. We can then go step through all of these scenarios as well. But today we're going to talk about device platforms, because we only want this to apply to iOS. We could apply it to Windows Phone as well, because it's not going to do anything. So we're applying this to iOS, and then from a location point of view, we're not going to set anything. The thing to call out on locations is IP address. It's based on IP addresses, and they can be spoofed or mimicked, so don't necessarily put all your eggs in the location basket. Under client apps, we're going to sit here and we're going to say, this is going to apply to the modern apps and desktop clients. That's it. Everything else is not allowed. I think this is the right way to set it up. No, it needs to be the other way. Sorry, Adam. We're going to sit here and say, these ones are not allowed.
Select the clients this policy will apply to. Control user access.
Yep.
Target
so what we're saying
is applications not using modern authentication.
Yep. So it's going to apply to those. We don't care about that one. It has to be on an approved client app. And this is the important one, right? So we click on the link because we're awesome. We have that nice easy access link and we can see what you can actually run. So these are the iOS and Android apps that are supported as applications. So that then drives across to our Intune app protection policies, which we'll talk about in a minute. And for those playing at home, Microsoft Application Manager, or MAM, is the same as Intune Application Protection Policies. It's just a new name. So we step across there and we're going to go cool. And we're going to say we're requiring the application protection policy as well. And you'll see the same list, but it's going to be a limited number.
So not to, to derail us, to go to tangent. So there's a setting that's the auto enrollment, not the auto enrollment, the MDM and MAM configuration on the tenant. Do we need to have MAM configured on our tenant? Okay.
That's correct. So MAM needs to be configured and we'll come through to that shortly. And we're going to not worry about that because it's not needed, and we're going to turn this on. So this now applies to my account when I'm on an iOS device. So we go create, and we've got to give it a name. The name's super important, and because we love our emojis, we're going to be using emojis going forward for our naming convention.
Yeah. Ninja Cat, Superstar.
And Superstar. There we go. That looks good to me.
Yeah, I like it. Ninja Cat Superhero, Love Struck Superstar. Got it.
So we've now got a...
Hello, welcome to our professional channel, managing your professional devices. Start off, here's how you use emojis. And in case all of the comments are, how did he do that? The shortcut key on Windows is Windows ; to pop open the emoji toolbar to select your emojis.
Exactly.
We might as well go down that path. Steve, hit Windows ; for a moment. And you can also change the options at the top, and you can do the more traditional. Look at those guys. What are these, ASCII art? No, that's not the name of these.
Art. Yeah, these are ASCII.
That's what they're called? What are those guys? And that's just special characters. So this is actually the useful one, the symbols page. Oh, Kamoji. There was. It says the name. Emoji, Kamoji, Calmoji? Who knows? We are too old for this stuff. Anyway, they're great.
Firecracker.
Yeah. We can learn the names. Sparkles. Oh, that's the one we just put. All right, anyway, we better stop. All right, Carry on. Sorry, folks.
We get excited by shiny things.
Yes, we do. Okay, so we've created our conditional access policy to restrict Steve's access on any iOS device that he logs into Office or Cloud Apps, Office specifically Cloud Apps, with his Intune.training user credentials.
That's correct.
All right.
Yes. So now if I go over here and I go to my account, and I'm just going to show you this quickly. We can then go and see our sign-in information for this account by going in here, and we can see each account when it authenticates. We have a conditional access tab here, and we can see what was there. So at that time, we had a different policy called test that we've now removed, but we can step in and do additional components. So As I go through and start accessing my emails on the phone, it will start popping up.
Awesome.
And we'll see that in there.
Okay.
Cool.
And then we need to double check our MAM configuration.
Yes. Let's go double check our MAM configuration. So we go devices, enroll devices, and then in here,
Automatic enrollment. Is it automatic enrollment?
Yes.
Yes.
And we've got it set to all.
Awesome.
So this is the one that's important, which is the MAM settings. So now we go back to devices, and we go down here to, no, it's under apps, sorry. And we select the applicate or app protection policy or app. And
I see what you did there. See, it's APP. There you go.
Yeah. So we're going to create a policy here. We're just going to grab a random one that we've already put here. And we're going to go next. And we're going to target all apps, all device types, or we can sit there and say, well, we only want this to apply to unmanaged. So previously you could only build it for managed or unmanaged. You had to have a separate policy for both. But now it's been consolidated together, and we can sit there and go, I don't care the device type. I want you to use this application protection policy. And that's super important. The device does not need to be enrolled. This is BYOD scenarios. So we then go here and we're going to select
the important thing there then is that this is a thing that's being applied at the cloud level at the time of authentication. It is being attached to that cloud application authentication token at that point, where it's going to check to see, will I auth you? So I guess to put this into Atom terms, in the same way that the application is verifying that you put in the proper credentials and that your password is valid, it is also then checking additional things on your device before it finishes the authentication.
That's correct.
Whatever process.
Yeah. So, and the thing is, the application needs to be enlightened, or Intune enlightened, MAM enlightened, however you want to call it.
No heavy applications. Got it.
That's right. It needs to be very, very light. So what you'll see on the right-hand side, when I select the app, select a public app, there is a whole list of applications that now have the Intune enlightenment in there. And the next step that we'll talk through is why we want to do this. So I'm just going to select Outlook because that's what we're going to use for our demo. But as you can see, there's a huge amount of applications in here that you can put protection policies on. Obviously, there's a lot of Microsoft apps, but you can now see things like ServiceNow, QLink, Printer On, Zoom, Xero. So it's being built out, and more organizations are including this in their public applications.
And just to go back to enlightened, that's just a term to indicate that it has been configured to function with Intune.
With Intune application management.
Okay.
Yeah, Intune, Microsoft application management, MAM, application protection policies. Basically, there's an SDK that you can connect in there for your developers to sit there and build that out. So if you're building an internal application, you can go in here and register your own custom app. And so long as it has all of the information in there and the SDK in there, you can control what data is ingressing and egressing from that application.
And so essentially that is allowing the application to have the functionality to integrate to Intune to respect the application protection policies that you're applying to it, so that it knows how to process that, just like it knows how to process the authentication token to Azure to auth your user. It's going to also have the additional pieces, so where it's calling the APIs or whatever required to.
That's correct.
Process those policies. Okay.
Yep. And allow you to put in the blocking processes. So, for example, we're going to sit here and we're going to say, we don't want you to back up organizational data to iTunes or the iCloud. And the reason is because technically you could then download that, and if you had a big enough computer and a long enough time, you could decrypt the data. It takes a long time, a lot of effort, and it's not something that you could sit there and spend time, a normal person would spend the time to do, but it's possible. So for me, look, my position on backing up your iPhone and your Android device is make sure your photos are being synced, make sure your contacts are being synced. And why would I care about backing up my phone? Because everything lives in the cloud, and everything that exists on the device has been downloaded off the cloud, or it's been consumed on the device or created on the device and sent up to the cloud straight away. So it now becomes just this disposable asset of what does it matter? Yeah. So the next one is the important one, which is send all data to other apps. Right now, the default is all apps. We're wanting to sit there, and if we change that to none, that means that I can't take organizational data out of Outlook and paste it into any other application, which it sounds great, right?
Yeah, why not?
What about if I have on my calendar entry the address that I need to go to for a meeting, and I want to put it into Maps so I can put it into my sat nav or put it into Uber? Doesn't work.
Yeah.
So this is where you need to start looking at, well, I want to have OS sharing, and this then allows you to select your exempt apps, and it puts in the default ones where it's going to go into your telco apps, it's going to go into Skype, and a whole heap of additional things. You can then go in and add in things like, I want to be able to go into Maps. The other option you can select is open in share filter. And that's going to sit there and say, well, I can allow content to come from other apps into my work profile. Super important.
Yeah. I don't. So I think we're using like Citrix or something to give me access to Outlook on my phone, and in a browser, but I can't copy and paste out of the browser
That's
on
right.
my phone. And I find it. I mean, sometimes it's annoying because I'm trying to get information, moved around or whatever, and so then what I do is, because I can't do what I'm needing to do, I just forward the email. Sorry, I'm not going to talk about that on. But that's what users do, right? Right. So
Yes. Yes.
Users
will work a way around the security protocols that are in place.
Yes.
And this is where it's a matter of building those scenarios in place so that you can better control your corporate data. It's the scenario where I always talk about with printers. As much as you guys sit there and go, Steve, it's printers, what does it really matter? It's the first point of DLP loss. Because as soon as it's printed on a bit of paper,
you have no control over it anymore.
You have zero control. It doesn't matter the access control list you have on that. Paper doesn't respect your access control list.
Yep. Well, and this also goes to the conversations we've had around security, where if security makes people's jobs harder to do, people aren't going to do things securely. Like, if my password has to be ridiculously long and something that I can't memorize, I'm going to start having a password that I use the same password everywhere, because I can't keep up with all of them. And so you've overly complicated the process. And so if you make it so that am I frozen? All right, there we go. Sorry, we're having technical difficulties. So if you make it so that I want to use my company stuff on my phone, but I can't because of some limitation, then I'm going to stop using it, or I'm going to start having bad behavior around it. So the better thing is to
bigger wall around that bad behavior, rather than sitting there and taking the time to understand the behavior that is required and going forward from there.
Yeah, allow people to do things, but do them with certain controls in place to protect them while they're doing those things. So, because then it will prevent them from doing other bad behaviors that are harder to control.
Exactly. So the other one that I really like is this block, where we're going to block the ability to save corporate data. So you can't just sit there and open up the Word document and go save as. Nope. you can't just do that. But what I can do is I can say, well, sure, you're more than welcome to save a copy of it to your OneDrive and to your SharePoint, just not local storage. Because I control your SharePoint and I control your OneDrive. So what does it matter? We then start stepping through into that dialer apps. And we can say, well, I want to only have a specific dialer app. Obviously, you just want to use any dialer app unless it's some sort of scenario where you have a configuration that is not standard. And we'll go through this. There's a couple of things around access requirements and conditional launch that will make that, for the most part, for most organizations, something that you don't need to think about. But that's later on. From a received data from other apps, we can sit there and say, I want to bring it from all apps. And this is where I want to allow somebody to paste data from Edge or Safari or whatever is on their phone into Outlook, because they've gone and found this link and they want to paste it into an email to share it out at work. Cool, that makes sense. This one here is one I love, which is the copy paste. I can sit there and allow you to copy and paste between all policy managed applications with the ability to paste in. And then we step into that whole...
You should set a character limit. You can copy it one character at a time. If you're determined, we will let you.
Exactly. As we can see, Adam really hasn't had much sleep today. So this one here I always find interesting. Third-party keyboards. Do you know why you would want to block that, Adam?
Keyloggers built into the third-party keyboards.
Exactly. Even if they're proprietary, trusted third-party keyboards, unless you've got application protection policy sitting over the top of that, it's going off and building heuristics and libraries based upon that third-party keyboard.
Yeah.
It's important to note here, there will be certain scenarios where you won't be able to leverage and force them to use that third-party keyboard. One of the things you'll note here is personal accounts for apps that support multiple identities will be affected. So this is where, with Outlook, you can set up multiple accounts, and being your personal email account and your Office 365 account from work, and it will sit there and block the third-party keyboard because we're going to go the most restrictive instead of least restrictive.
Oh, and so once you've signed in with your corporate account, all of a sudden your third-party keyboard stops working. And then the only way to get it back would be to sign out of your corporate account, and then it would remove the policy.
But that's only when you're inside the application.
Right. Yeah. But it would be very confusing to a user who's using their personal device, and all of a sudden their cool emoji keyboard stopped working.
That's right.
Yeah. That's a good point.
And you also have to look at it from people that are using keyboards for other languages. They may not be the standard keyboards. So it's important to call that out, right?
Yeah.
And then we're stepping through the whole, well, of course we want it encrypted. We're going to sit there and make sure that we're syncing the policy with the native apps because consistency. We want to block printing of org data because don't print.
Bad for the environment.
Exactly. And then you can sit here and you can say, I want to make it so you have to go to Microsoft Edge as a trusted browser. And we can then put our application protection policies over the top of Edge and control the data in and out of that as well. And you can have your org data notification. So this is where it will sit there and say, hey, you're not allowed to share this. So this is where you'll see here, this, where is it, iOS? It doesn't have a sample. Let's see if there's a sample in here. No, it doesn't have the sample. But basically, it's the text that it'll give you to say you're not allowed to copy and paste. You can either have it so it'll just paste in, you're not allowed to copy and paste this, or you can sit there and just put nothing up. So we're then going to talk about the access requirements. And this is where we're going to sit there and say, you have to have a PIN. We're going to allow sample PIN, but we're also going to allow biometrics. And we're going to allow biometrics PIN.
And to be clear, this is a device level requirement?
Yes, but you can also set an app PIN. So all of this up to here is device level, right? We're going to sit there and we're going to leverage the same PIN that you're using to sign into the device, the same Face ID. If you don't have a device PIN, we will set an application PIN with this setting. Done.
Okay. So that's cool. So then you could, well, so if you say not required at the top level, does it kill off the device PIN?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But so, app PIN when device PIN is set, required or not required. Okay. So no, so there's not you can't do one without the other, but you can require two, is what it's saying. So because if you do not required for PIN altogether, then you don't get the app PIN. But this is saying app PIN when device PIN is set. So then if you say require, then that means you're going to have a PIN on the app in addition to the PIN that you used for the device.
Yeah. So long as you have your PIN for your app to have a consistency with what they have for the PIN for the phone, they shouldn't be out of sync. But if you sit here and go, well, you've got to reset your PIN every 30 days, that will force you to change your phone PIN as well. Yeah.
And this is where you kind of hit that point of users, when you're configuring, when you are trying to give people access on their BYOD, you are then moving their cheese a little bit sometimes. When they say, oh, I don't want to have a PIN. I don't want to have face. I don't want to have this or that. And you say, well, look, that's fine. You can't get to corporate data unless you set this. Now, we aren't controlling the PIN, but we are restricting what you can get to without it. And so yeah, or you can carry around a second phone, or you can carry your laptop around, or whatever.
If it comes down to personal choice, right? And we're not sitting here and saying you have to do it this way. It's just your option of how you get access to corporate data.
Yeah, just thinking through the user scenarios there and stuff.
Yep. So cool. The last one that I'm going to call out here, and this comes back to that whole conversation about custom dialers. We can block jailbroken / rooted devices. We're just going to say blanket ban, you are not allowed to use this device. We don't trust it because we don't know how everything's been signed. But
unless on a corporate level, you're issuing rooted devices to your users, and that's just weird.
Which can happen.
There's a company that comes to mind that's offering a service that revolves around those types of devices. It's interesting.
Yes. So one of the things you can do here, and I wouldn't recommend it for unmanaged devices, is you can actually start talking about maximum allowed device threat level. And this is where you can start leveraging the mobile threat defense devices protocols and say they must be secure. So we're going to say hi, and we're going to block. So if it doesn't meet that, we're just going to block access. So we're going to remove that because it will fail in our environment, but that's if you've got mobile threat defense set up, but you can also base it upon a host version. So if your phones are before 13.4, or sorry, before 14.4, because there's now that exploit that's there, sorry, you don't have access. We can sit there and say, well, max version, we're going to, let's not do max version. Let's do
minimum version.
Minimum. And we're going to sit here and go 14.1, right? and we're going to sit there and say warn. If you don't meet 14.1, we're going to warn you and say you really need to update. And then after a period of time, you can sit there and go, actually, you know what? You don't have access anymore. We've given you a month. Your access has been revoked.
Or wipe data. That's fantastic.
And that's corporate data, not
Yes.
personal data.
Right.
Right? Super important to call out there, Adam. We're not
Yes.
touching personal data. Then you've also got the SDK version, where you can sit there and I say, I want it to be a minimum SDK version inside the application. You can do app versioning, and you can say if it's a disabled account, wipe data. So as soon as the account's disabled, we're going to wipe the data. Sorry.
Yeah, that's cool.
Or we can block access. Same thing. But we're going to leave all that default. And we're just going to go next. We're not going to set out any scope tags because we don't need them. And again here, this is where we're going to then link it to our accounts. And because I have already got my account here, which is setgroup SH, we're going to select that and we're going to step all the way across. Then we're going to create that, and it's going to go through and it's going to apply to my phone. Look, let me just bring up my phone here.
So while you're doing that, for those at home, because I clearly get this, what is so we've set up the conditional access policy, but we've also now got an application protection policy. So what is, do I need them both together, or can I do just an app protection policy without a conditional access policy? And how do they differ from each other?
So if you do an app protection policy without conditional access, there's no way to force your users to not use the inbuilt mail application, which is this, right? So if we go here, that would be where you would get that inbox, right? And it's the inbox application. But now we're going to go across and let's see if this works, because I haven't preloaded it. We're going to go and grab Outlook, and we're going to go and install that on the device and hope it doesn't prompt for passwords, because Apple's awesome at hiding passwords. So it's going to quickly go and install Outlook. And once that's installed, we'll be able to see the process of what that app protection policy is going to do. Where it will block access to exfilling data out of that corporate application. So one thing I will quickly note while this is going through is what happens if you have multiple, Adam, what do you think will happen if you have multiple M365 accounts that have app protection policies enabled?
Well, I would hope that each one of them would apply differently depending on which one you switched over to.
No. So what happens is the accounts will, so the first account will apply and the second account won't be allowed to be added, unfortunately. So I'm just going to take this off the screen while I put in my password. So you'll note to use Outlook, I need to have the Microsoft Authenticator app on my iOS device. That's what helps handle the application protection policy configuration. So I'm just going to quickly install that, and then I'll need to re-authenticate again because we can't authenticate enough. And I'll take it completely off the screen this time. And what I'm doing here is I'm just registering the device, and my other phone will have the MFA prompt for this account, because you can't not have MFA on your accounts nowadays, especially if it's a global admin, which these are. Well, you can, but I'm trying to infer that you shouldn't.
Yeah, perhaps.
Bad practices if you don't have MFA. So you'll now see that your organization is now protecting this app. And this is Outlook, not the Authenticator app. So it will close out and it will open back up. So now we're going to check our app status. It'll take a little bit of time because my internet's fantastically fast because there's no SIM in this device. It's going to go and connect and download everything required for that account.
Conditional access is going to ensure that if I want to get to company data, that my device meets certain requirements before I can get to that data. The application protection policies is a method for me to manage the application itself, what data can be moved in and out of the application once I'm in the application. So one is making sure that I can't get to it if I'm on an unsafe or unsecure or don't meet minimum requirements. And the other one is, okay, you're in it and we're going to protect you while you're there and protect our data while you're in there and making sure that we restrict what you can and can't do once you're in the app.
Yep, that's correct. So what I'm going to quickly do as a sample here is I'm going to grab a copy of this text because it's super important. I just want to get a copy of it. And then I'm going to go across here to my notes. And what should happen is, if we go new notes, I go paste. You'll see here your organization data cannot be pasted here, not allowed to. So that is where you stop having data being copied from a corporate sensitive email and put into Facebook or Twitter or associated technologies where people will inevitably share that information. So the other thing you'll note here, you'll see there, Adam, is when I go and scroll across, the Outlook app is all grayed out because I need to go back in there and authenticate and go back into focus. If I'm not focusing on that app, it's going to sit there and basically blur it. The other thing that we're going to quickly go through, and I'll see if I can remember the process to do it, is we're going to try and take a screenshot. No, is it that one? No. So we grabbed a screenshot, and I'm surprised we're actually able to do that because you can actually set rules to say block screenshots. Evidently, we must have missed that one. But that's where you can stop people taking a screenshot of it and sharing it out. So if we go back in here, properties, or this may have been removed. I always get this one wrong. I think Apple removed that functionality. I always get this one wrong.
Yeah, I don't see.
Yep. So now if we go up here and do I have ability to save? No, I don't, because I don't have an attachment.
You've moved the phone off the screen.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to have a quick look to see if I had the ability to save it out, but I don't have the ability to save an email directly out. But if I did, it would be limited to Outlook, or sorry, not Outlook, SharePoint or OneDrive.
Now you could still
on this phone.
You could still forward the email out, right?
That's correct.
You could also put in some DLPs or something, or WIP or something along those lines to then prevent forwarding of certain emails or classifying them. Or
WIP is not the technology you'd use for that. WIP is the Windows.
I was just throwing out acronyms. I don't know which ones they
are. So what you'd be looking at is your email gateway DLP solution. And this is where you put rules in there to say classifying that document as sensitive and it's not allowed to be forwarded on. So this is around corporate controls around that technology and processes. So it comes back to that whole data classification conversation. How many people love having the data classification conversation? Not many people, right?
No.
I don't even think the team that are actually doing governance associated to data classification love talking about data classification. But it's super important when it comes to those sorts of scenarios where you want to stop something being forwarded on. So what you'll note is, if I go back here, that's still working, but that's because it hasn't re-authenticated in. So this is the standard mail application inbox.
Oh, so we were going to do auditing on the audit logs on that to show what that looked like as well.
Yep. And no, we don't want to do that. We're going to Azure Active Directory. Then we're going to go to users. And we're going to select Steve. And here we're going to see our sign-ins. And right now it hasn't updated to re-sign in and authenticate. But you'll see now that Apple has its own app that you can register, which is the Apple Internet accounts. You can go and explicitly block this if you don't want that to work. The interesting one here is our conditional access rules are failing, but we're still allowed to use stuff because we haven't specified a rank control.
Well, you did at the beginning promise a failure, so here we go.
Perfect.
Back to the roots.
But again, this is where, and I'm not going to troubleshoot it because it's been going for long enough, but this is where go through, test, validate, and make sure it works in your environment before you go and roll it out to your whole organization, because it can be an impactful change. It can cause organizational discomfort. So coordinate it, make sure you do business change management really well, and communicate that out to your end users. Cool. So I think that covers off everything that we were planning to go over in this session, Adam. Is there anything else you want to discuss before we closed out?
No, I think we've pretty well covered it. Yeah, that looks good. I mean, awesome. I have no idea. I don't manage these things. I got nothing.
I don't either anymore.
Just use this stuff.
Yeah. So what you're saying is I need to block you from being able to do stuff.
Yeah, probably. So if you've made it this far in the video, congratulations. One last thing to ask is if you are interested in more iOS related stuff, which I think most folks, we've gotten a fair amount of feedback on that. Shoot us a comment. Let us know kind of specifically what gaps you've got, what things you're looking for. Steve and I are discussing on how we can provide some more iOS content. We know that our episode 15, I think, is we had audio issues on that one. So yes. But we know it's actually a relatively popular video, and we would like to get back to doing some of those things. So there's just so much cool stuff to cover that it's hard to, we're trying to not redo, but we also want to revisit some things, just like we started doing with some of the Intune things. So yeah, just let us know kind of what you're interested in. And then also while you're in there in the comments, go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and all that good stuff.
And before we wrap up there, Adam, I'll just quickly show you what we're going to see for once it finishes, it tries to reshare my screen because it's popped up the authentication. Okay, just bear with me. I closed out a bare server.
Oh, and somebody is inevitably going to ask what screen sharing thing was Steve using. It's called Air Server. I think it's a paid product.
Yep, it's a paid product. So this is what's happening now on my phone because it's gone to authenticate to the mail app. It's saying
this is where you're using the inbuilt mail app?
Yep.
Okay.
So if we go more details, what should happen is it should show down the bottom what we're actually doing and where the app is. So you'll see here is the Apple Internet account. And so that's saying that account doesn't have permission to authenticate.
Very cool.
We just go OK. And you'll see here, if we go back to mail, once it gets all the way back, it's saying account error down the bottom. And we can see the details on that, and then we'll go and check it.
Now, so the mail that it's already cached is going to stay there, though, right?
It will age out. Yes, that's okay. Correct.
So the important thing to consider here is turn on these policies before you enable users to sign in to their corporate mail on their personal devices, So force them to use the Outlook app, and the reason is because then you can then manage wiping that data. Because if the application is not managed on an unmanaged device, then you have no control over your data. So don't just let people just go use your data anywhere on any kind of device. I know it's convenient, and I know it's just email, but how many confidential or company important things have you sent in email? Lots of that. Come on, that's one of the biggest ways that just look at the government. How many people have gotten nailed for emails on a server? So be careful with your company data.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Adam. I think that's been a good session. And as you were saying, make sure you subscribe down there, leave some comments, and until next time.
Absolutely. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Adam.
See ya.
Bye-bye.